Taking a look at the NFC side of things today. AFC yesterday, go back and find that episode. NFC head coaches, team by team, every team. How hot are the seats? What coaches could get fired with a poor season? What coaches could be let go if the start isn't good this year, and be looking for new coaches in 2024? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, as I said in the open, you guys can go back and check out the AFC hot seats from Monday's episode. Today, we're looking at the NFC, and there's a lot of good teams and a lot of good coaches, and I think a lot of job security in the AFC. NFC a lot more wide open, Matt, and I think there's a lot more opportunity for some axes to fall on the proverbial coaches' heads, I think, in 2023.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, the AFC has better football teams. I don't think anybody will dispute that. They definitely have better quarterbacks and a wealth of young ones that have already made it, the Burrows, the Herberts, the Allens, those type of dudes. But I thought about that as you were saying it was, yes, I bet these seats are hotter than what we discussed yesterday, but maybe we were a little easy on people yesterday, because what if you're high expectation team in the AFC, but you're the 9th seed? You know, you're not even fighting for a playoff spot in week 18 because your conference is just so brutal. You know, maybe more axes fall than we gave them credit for yesterday.
Interesting, right? So teams with higher expectations are more likely to underachieve in the AFC because there's so many good teams, whereas a team in the NFC might not be very good and they sneak into the playoffs and like, hey, what a great season, what a great coach. When in actuality, you know, they weren't that good of a team and that good of a coaching job.
Maybe Atlanta wins 9 games, sneaks in the playoffs. Wow, they're ahead of expectations. But if they were in the AFC, they win 7 and be like, oh, they're on the hot seat. You know what I mean? I'm just using them as an example.
We expect, I think, and we're starting in the East, the Dallas Cowboys to be one of those playoff teams in the NFC. Matt, is Mike McCarthy potentially fired or a Hall of Famer?
Oh, I think he's closer to fired.
Oh,
and that's rough. I mean, I'm not predicting him to get fired, but he's kind of out of excuses. That's not the right way to say it. Expectations are super high. This is a good football team that needs to be a double-digit win team, compete for an NFC championship, hang with the Eagles at least in the division. You can't, you moved on from your coordinator on offense. It's now your show. You're more than just a CEO now. There's just a little bit more of a spotlight on him than there was, you know?
Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator, Dan Quinn, the DC there for Mike McCarthy, and John Fossil. There's some familiar names there coaching that football team for Mike McCarthy.
Yeah.
Dallas Cowboys here in 2023. And I don't think the regular season matters that much unless they completely lay an egg and don't make the playoffs. To me, for Dallas Cowboys fans and probably for the Jones family, they're like, we can't go lose to the 49ers in the first or second round of the playoffs again. You know, we can't let the Eagles go to the NFC Championship and us not go to the NFC Championship. So I think there's a little bit of I think there's 3 teams that are clearly the best teams in the NFC coming into the year. And I think it is the Eagles and the Cowboys in the East and the 49ers in the West, barring what happens at quarterback for the 49ers. I think they've got a 3-headed monster. They'll figure it out. They have in the past. And the Cowboys, I think, are fighting with those teams more so than everyone else. And this might be a perfect example of what you talked about at the beginning, Matt, which is expectations. So how do they finish versus expectations? If they finish third and the only 2 teams that beat them is the 49ers and the Eagles, is that is that upsetting enough to the Jones family to start looking around and be like, we need to get over this hump? Is it players? Is it coaches that we need to change?
Right. Exactly. Like, sort of to reiterate what you said, I feel like a successful season would be you're one of the big three. I mean, if you're right there and we're right about the Niners and Eagles, frankly, I have a little more faith in the Eagles than the Niners just because of quarterback situation. But I still think anyone would think those are the best three teams in the NFC today. I think you need to maintain that status, from now until the day you are eliminated or hoist a Lombardi trophy, that the world needs to kind of see you as a top three team in your conference. And the last note is don't let Dak regress anymore. Like you got a lot invested in him, and it seems like just yesterday, but it's almost time to talk about re-upping him again. He led the league in interceptions. I didn't think he had a bad year, but our prime asset needs to be a prime asset.
Yep. Well put. Interesting one. I don't think it's it's on the cooler side for sure. And maybe it's even ice cold. I don't know how the Jones family feels about Mike McCarthy after the season they had last year. It was coming into the year. We thought it was warmer seat than it ended up being because they had a nice season. And Sean Payton was looming. Sean Payton's not looming anymore. So Jerry Jones might not have that inkling anymore to even say like, oh, we got to get rid of Mike McCarthy because they were short of my expectations. But who are we going to go hire?
Right. And names will pop up, of course. Somebody will be, and I'm sure they pay extremely well and all that good stuff too. But I think it's lukewarm.
I think it's much cooler than that. But I could see how it could get warm fast in Dallas.
Yeah. Expectations.
Next is the New York Giants, Matt, and head coach Brian Daboll, who had a fantastic first year for the Giants. They've got Kafka on offense. They've got Don Martindale as the defensive coordinator there. And Kafka did not get stolen away. Great coaching job. Maybe set up expectations a little too high for year two, but I can't see him going anywhere no matter what happens this year. I think this is one of the safer jobs in the NFC.
Yeah, I'm going to go so far as to say cold as ice. I mean, they may be out, like the Vikings, outkick their coverage in terms of record versus what they really were on the field last year. But even if that regresses to the mean and they are a 7-win team, I think he has enough money in the bank that we finally have our coach. They haven't had that. Yeah.
You look for excuses like for the Cowboys. Do they blame Dak? If somebody has to go, you just change your offensive coordinator, right? If something, do you change defensive coordinators? Do you blame Dak? Do you blame the GM? And the Jones family's kind of the GM there. So that's not going to happen.
Right.
Or does it come down on the head coach? For the New York Giants, it's super easy to say, oh, the quarterback's never been the right guy. It wasn't our quarterback. Let's go pick our own quarterback now.
Hopefully the organization's smart, wise enough to say if things crumble and the investment in Daniel Jones and maybe even Saquon, if they were to extend him, doesn't work out, that it wasn't Daboll's fault. He's the best asset in the organization to me.
The Philadelphia Eagles represented the NFC in the Super Bowl last year, Matt.
I think they're pretty safe.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni's squad did a great job, but they lost both coordinators, offensive and defensive. And Eagles fans are kind of like saying, "Oh, we didn't like our defensive coordinator anyway. I can't believe he got hired away as a head coach. This is a bonus that we got rid of our defensive coordinator." I'm not sure about that one, but losing both coordinators could be tough. And I wonder if expectations are so high that the seat could become warm in the future. We've seen how quickly they moved off of a Super Bowl winning head coach before in Philadelphia. So it's just something to monitor there. But I can't imagine any seat being in any way warm this year for
if we do the show 365 days from now and they were 9-8 and Hurts took a step back, maybe we would say, well, maybe it's a little warm, but it would have to be that catastrophic.
Maybe the Steichen was the genius there all along, right. Kind of comments.
Yeah. But I mean, they're cold as ice too.
We'll finish up the East with Washington next and move on to the North, South, and West of the NFC. Every team's head coach job security. How warm are these seats in the NFC going into the 2023 season? Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look good, and they make you feel good as well. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. The look you are looking for and the feel you are looking for. Bird Dogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They are built for you. They fit the way shorts should feel, and they feel better than regular shorts because of most, regular old shorts that you might have been wearing your whole life, stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed all those issues by inventing cloud knit fabric. It looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. And it moves in all the ways you need it to throughout your day, whether you are at work, whether you're sitting doing a podcast. I love my Bird Dogs for podcasting. I love my Bird Dogs for going out on the golf course, for hanging out at the barbecue. Do whatever you need. They are so versatile. Anti-stink sweat wicking fabric keeps you cool and dry in those summer months as well. So just go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL. You can also enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or promo code LockedOnNFL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your Bird Dogs. You won't take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Finishing up the NFC East, Matt, and the Washington Commanders. And Ron Rivera is exactly the coach that Washington needed when he joined up. There's a selling of the organization, so there's turmoil there. If that gets completed, I think it's much more likely you start a new regime after that. They brought in a new offensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy. Jack Del Rio, longtime coach, is the defensive coordinator there in Washington. I do feel like this is the last shot for Ron Rivera to put a winner on the football field, and it is a tough division, so maybe that's a little bit unfair. But once a sale goes through, and if you're not coming off a playoff season, I think it's going to be tough for Ron Rivera to hold on to his job.
I tend to agree, and I think he's a respectable head coach that doesn't have a particularly high ceiling, also has a pretty high floor, as a head coach, had to really navigate some brutal, rough waters, and that probably used to be the least attractive job in the league in terms of who your boss is, ownership, and now it isn't. The only thing I would just add to what you said, because I think you nailed it, is we just don't know the personality of this owner as an NFL owner yet. Are they aggressive? Are they patient? I'm not suggesting they're going to be the Rooneys and stick with someone for, decades, but what's their thoughts on change,
And this is a team that's getting better, and I would expect them to be better this year. And you've got a well-respected head coach. I think it probably would be very smart for new ownership to come in and say, we're going to kick back for a year and learn this and watch a respected head coach work and know a little bit more about our football team before we start meddling a little bit. That'd probably be the smart way to go. And I kind of want to see Ron Rivera get an opportunity. I mean, you mentioned it. This was the worst job, and they needed Ron Rivera more than Ron Rivera needed Washington. And it feels like they're on the cusp of turning this thing around. I mean, Sam Howell is your quarterback, though. Jacoby Brissett. That's where it gets a little bit difficult, but they've got a lot of talent on this team. And I would like to see Ron Rivera get the opportunity to kind of see this thing through.
I would too. I think he's done an admirable job despite navigating rough waters, but I kind of bet he's not the head coach next year. You know what I mean?
Yeah, reality is he starts the season warm.
Yeah, and they're probably not going to be in the top two in the division. I mean, they're probably fighting for third place,
Moving on to the NFC North and those Chicago Bears, alphabetical order here. Matt Eberflus, he's in year 2 with offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, defensive coordinator Alan Williams, and they've done a lot of work on the offensive side of the ball. They've done a lot of work in the secondary on defense. This is a team that everybody expects more. Now, with expectations, Matt, come the reality that, okay, it's got to start looking a lot better. They earned the first pick in the NFL draft last year, and I don't know how many, and they chose to stick with their quarterback. And the quarterback that they didn't have to. This wasn't the quarterback that the head coach and GM brought in, but this is the head coach that the new GM brought in, right? So they're tied a little bit, and I would think that Eberflus would get a little bit of leeway with Ryan Poles, and knowing the job that they were taking over for a rebuild of this football team. if you're the owner though, do you let GM and head coach, if they earn, let's say, the back-to-back number 1 overall picks, do you let them make that decision? Because clearly that'll mean that Justin Fields wasn't the guy or was hurt all year or something.
Mm-hmm.
You let them choose that next quarterback, or do you look elsewhere would be my question.
If it's a disastrous top 5 pick season, I think they all could get cleaned out. I mean, I do hope that people don't use the mantra of he's a defensive-minded head coach who made his bones there, and this defense isn't good, so he's not helping us. Well, they don't have any good players on defense. They don't have enough, So I hope that isn't something that's held over his head for this upcoming year. The whole goal is just make the offense progress, especially the quarterback. That's where you invested. If that's the case, I think he at least gets another year, and maybe a lot more.
I mean, it's real. The more I look at this, really just the defensive line.
You're right. The back seven.
They brought in Tremaine Edmonds. Right. They brought in TJ Edwards at linebacker. Mm-hmm. And I know that, they lost a better linebacker last year. They traded away, but, they brought in some talent there. They've got
good there. Yeah.
In the back seven, the corners with Kyler Gordon and Tyreek Stevenson, the last 2 second-round picks for the team. They got Jalen Johnson at the other corner. They've got Jaquan Brisker, a second-rounder. Eddie Jackson's a really good free safety. That's a really solid secondary. So the back seven is fine. Can they put pressure on the quarterback? Is really the sliding scale for this football team. And on offense, it's how good is Justin Fields and how much better is he in the quick passing game than he's been in the first couple of years of his career. So
that's well said.
I don't know what to expect, but they better not be drafting top. They better not be drafting high enough to get Derek May or Williams at quarterback. That's kind of that. Even if they draft 5, that's okay. Just don't draft 1 or 2.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm rough on the Bears D. But 1 year from now, we might be like, they signed this year's version of Javon Hargrave and drafted this year's version of Will Anderson. You know what I mean? Like, right. If it's one spot that they can attack with early picks that they have 2 of, as well as tons of cap space, they might be really on the right path a year from now after a 7-10 season where Fields looks like he's the guy.
And those are positions you can add on the fly quicker. So let's say they start off 4-3 and they're like, okay, we're in this in the North. Let's go get that at the deadline. Let's start that now.
Yeah,
and maybe they get a big fish there on the defensive line.
Chase Young, right. Yeah, right.
A really exciting team. I have no idea what to expect. I do have a feeling they're going to be a lot better. I can't wait to see what that looks like with and coaching is a big part of that. They're developing a lot of young talent there.
There is some volatility though. They could fall on their face and then their seat's hot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right now, I think it's
good. Yeah.
Cool after 1 year, but that's one of the things I wanted to talk about today, Matt, and we can't get too deep into this conversation because we got a lot of teams to go here, but real-time NFL is agonizingly slow and it's an eternity. It seems like the season goes so fast, but you get a pass for such a short time, and when you are ownership and you're looking at ticket sales decline and you're looking at your team stinking, it happens so fast. Like, you don't have to wait a year, wait a month and see how different all of these teams feel. Like in October, we'll be like, whoa, okay, this got hairy real quick.
Yeah. Or boy, they finished the season winning 3 of their last 4. They recovered. I like where we're going into the offseason. Could be positive too.
Dan Campbell, this feels like one of the safer jobs in the NFC, I think, for the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, let's make this one quick because I 100% agree. But, and I can't stress this enough, when's the last time this organization had expectations? Like if they win 9 games and come in second, is his seat warming up? Does he have to win double-digit games and win the North to be safe?
Yeah, our expectations so high that if they finish again 8-9, 9-8, kind of don't make the playoffs, is that a huge disappointment? Or are they like, okay, we need this one thing? That I would be shocked. They would have to fall completely on their face in Detroit, I think, for a coaching change. And I
agree. I don't see any way there's a coaching change. But again, if we do this show a year from now, I'll be like, he better pull this group back.
Oh yeah. Almost every coach on this list a year from now, if they fall, if they have an awful season, they're a lot warmer. A lot warmer. But Matt LaFleur, that's kind of where he is right now.
I don't know.
High with a Hall of Fame quarterback, but now you have a young quarterback. Does that earn you a pass, or does that just make you closer to let's find who the next guy is with the next quarterback if it doesn't work out with Jordan Love?
I think this is one of the hardest ones. I'm actually searching right now for his record because I know it's really good. I mean, he went year after year of winning 13 games. And
3 in a row, right?
Here we go. 13-3, 13-3, 13-4, 8-9. That's what he's done with the Packers. Ain't too shabby. He's 47-19, so I would think that in itself, even with an MVP quarterback for 2 of those years, definitely gives you a lot of leash. But,
and one thing, I got to give him credit, and Goody, the GM as well. I got to give him credit for how they built this around the young quarterback too. Christian Watson last year, Romeo Doubs last year. Then this year they come back in the second round again. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, a player I really liked, sleeper out of the 5th round. He's kind of blocked by all these guys on that team. They had Samari Toure was a 7th round rookie last year. So much young pass catching talent. And then the tight ends, they got a 2nd and a 3rd rounder, Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. So they're putting a ton of, I don't know if I love the youth because it's youth on youth with the young quarterback, first-time starter with a lot of young receivers, but it's a lot of talent. And they're going to try to give him as much receiving talent as they can to help incubate that young quarterback. So I do like that strategy.
I do too. I mean, I like the whole idea of the team, especially the offense, all growing together. I think there's value in that. That's always a weird team because they don't have an owner too. It's not like the whimsical owners just be like, I had a bad day. It's
it feels like they're probably erring on the side of stability in most cases over, just on an owner's whim saying, we're cleaning house, we're fine. I didn't like that season. We're going to do something else.
We have the big picture in mind here, building something big. And what people don't think about, though, if Jordan Love falls on his face, they can get out of that contract quick and go sign Kirk Cousins or trade for Kyler Murray. I mean, they can pivot.
Go into the draft. They can go a lot of directions.
Right.
Yeah. Minnesota Vikings finishing up the NFC North here, and Kevin O'Connell. This is a season set up for disappointment because they were going to regress from what they did last year. We'll see what it looks like with Brian Flores there, a defensive coordinator as well. But the talent on defense for Brian Flores is something I'm a little bit worried about, and I do expect this team to be worse than last year. How much worse is the question? And if it's a collapse and then last year for your quarterback that's going to move on, it's going to be a rebuild. So, rebuilds usually have new coaches, new GMs. This is a dicey one for me. It feels really warm despite how well I think Kevin O'Connell's done a good job and would get another job pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's a tough one as well. I would hope ownership doesn't say you went from 13 to 9 wins. This team's going backwards, because you might not be. You might still be making progress. And there's been a lot of change. I mean, I urged people a couple of weeks ago, the conversation we had with Luke from Locked On Vikings made me feel a little better that ownership, GM, coaches all understand the plan, that we're trying to compete, but we really, really have the future in mind, especially at quarterback. So I would hope that there's a lot of patience, because this could go a lot of different directions for them. I think the offense would be good.
It's hard to do both too. And Quasi, the GM there, you think you have a plan. And then again, like I said, in real time, all of a sudden you start losing games and people get really impatient. And is ownership, GM, head coach, are they all in lockstep in how this build and how this team is being built going forward is the big question.
I think we said this about Staley too, is if you're, quote, thinking outside the box and you're not winning, you get a lot more arrows too. Like, who do you think you are? These fancy analytics. We
don't want the analytics guy anymore. We're going to go the other direction and get the.
Give me Bill Parcells. Right.
Yeah. Let's try the lawyer guy this time.
Right.
All right. Next, NFC South and NFC West to finish up job security hot seat head coaches in 2023. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster and for free. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And why are there so many qualified candidates at LinkedIn? It's because everyone's already on LinkedIn. Those people you want to find, I'm on LinkedIn. Matt Williamson's on LinkedIn. It's going to be hard to hire us away, right? But we can find your job when you post it on your purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. And simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the right candidates within that large pool and shrink that pool down to just the right skills and experience for your job. Prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving on to the NFC South and the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a pretty hot seat, Matt, for Arthur Smith. And it's not because he's done a terrible job. It's just because at some point you have to start winning and you start getting multiple seasons and you're just kind of toiling around. Ownership and Arthur Blank, I think they're going to get impatient and they're going to do something. It's going to be quarterback, it's going to be coordinators, or it's going to be a coach if they have another bad season. Something big is going to happen this offseason unless they really show a lot of improvement. And you're like, okay, here, this is the direction. We found our quarterback. Those offensive playmakers are making plays. But, you know, if you're star tight end that you drafted #4 overall, if I'm an owner and I'm like, this guy's a freak of nature and he had 400 receiving yards, coach, what's going on?
Yeah, I hear you. You know, we're drafting all these guys in the top 10 and we're not getting the ball. And, you know, I mean, I understand what you just said, and ownership might 1,000 times agree with you. This is going to be the first one I think we're going to disagree heavily on, though. I mean, he had very, very little cash spending last year. I mean, no star talent really, developing things, and he figured out a way to turn a bad roster into a competitive one. And now they actually got out from the Matt Ryan and Julio awful era they were left. And I think they have to take a step forward, but I thought he did a tremendous job last year. I'm a big Arthur Smith believer. I don't know if ownership will agree.
This is a winnable division too. So if you start in a bad division and you still can't, you know, get out of it and get some traction, I think that's where things get difficult. And especially if teams like Frank Reich's Carolina Panthers, who traded up to get a quarterback #1 overall and starting a rookie quarterback, and they're better than you and your second-year quarterback with all the talent that you've acquired on offense, then that's where I think things get dicey for someone like Arthur Smith. But, you know, Frank Reich, this is year one of a long-term thing, and this is a pretty safe job.
Yeah, I think he's totally set. You know, I mean, unless it's a Broncos-like first year, and that could happen to anybody. But he's been around the block. I mean, that's not going to happen to him, I don't think, you know?
Right, and they know they're starting a rookie quarterback, and it's going to be a tough year, and there's going to be some growth, especially on offense.
Yeah, yep. I think this is an easy one.
Cannot be said about the New Orleans Saints. They went out and got the best quarterback they could find in free agency in Derek Carr. And Dennis Allen, I think, has to win a lot of football games.
I assume. I just wonder what ownership thinks of this, because they're a unique organization too. Let's max out our credit cards. Let's run it back. I always make the joke. It's always Mardi Gras in New Orleans. Do they want wholesale changes, you know, or do they just want the same type of coach? I mean, not from the same tree. I mean, you know, the Saints way.
That's the question. Do they want to continue to put everything on a credit card, or do they say, okay, no, we can't keep going on this way.
All right.
Let's clean it up this year. Let's get rid of that $50 million in dead cap that we start every year with, and let's take our medicine, start over. Derek Carr is not the guy. We're not going to win with this current group. It's not as good as the group that we're trying to, you know, inch along with. So let's start this over, fix up the cap, develop a quarterback for a year. Then we're on with a clean cap again and start over in 2024, 2025.
Move on from the Cam Jordans and DeMario Davises and, you know, stalwart players, and just give the whole team a facelift. And, you know, maybe it's a year overdue. And
by the way, an ultimate what if for the Saints here, and especially for head coach Dennis Allen and quarterback Derek Carr, because I thought they were together longer in Oakland, but it was actually rookie season Carr where Dennis Allen got fired like halfway through the season. So he didn't even last through rookie season Carr. And so they didn't really play a lot together. So it'd kind of be a what if that regime hung on a little longer in Oakland, what that would look like.
Yeah. You got to think Carr was a second-round pick. I mean, he wasn't even like a top 10 guy at that point, you know, going through, you know, training camp and all that. He wasn't like the anointed starter.
Here's another hot one for me, and that's Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's not Todd Bowles' fault. It's just, you know, okay, Todd, here you go. Oh, and guess what? Tom Brady's gone too. So Have fun. But there's still a lot of talent on this roster. I just don't know what it's going to look like with Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask and John Wolford. I mean, it's Baker Mayfield's job, but what's this going to look like? Can they get over the injury bug? There's still a lot of really talented players, though, on Tampa. So this is one of those where I have a hard time figuring out what this team is going to be. Can they be better without Tom Brady? And if they are, then Todd Bowles is fine. But if they're not, then I think they're going to start a new thing with a bunch of new pieces, especially with quarterback and head coach.
I think this might be the hottest of seats, or one of the top 3 or 4, because I thought there was a 50% chance he came back at all this year, to be honest with you. They moved on from Leftwich. The older Brady retires, old regime. It seemed like an easy offseason to transition, and they didn't. And I'm rooting for Todd. I've mentioned this before. Him and Chuck Pagano were our defensive back coaches when I was with the Browns, and he was an upstart young coach. I fear he's a coordinator and not a head guy, though, and a really good coordinator.
Is that the hottest so far in the NFC? I
think
Brandon Staley and the Chargers was the hottest in the AFC. That feels like one of the warmer. I would put Arthur Smith pretty close to that one for me. In
Washington?
The NFC. And Washington, right? Yeah. Those are the top 3 so far. Now let's take a look at the West. Jonathan Gannon. I don't expect this season to go well, but that's why his job is pretty safe, right? Could it be a one and done situation for Gannon if they earn the first overall pick and he's such a disaster, right? Like, I think
isn't that the plan, though?
So that's kind of the thing that happens sometimes, because you hire a guy based on interviews and what you think, and then you see him work every day, and it's like, oh, this is not it at all. And so, maybe they say, we got to start that over again. And we see a lot of one and dones, and that, especially if you earn the first overall pick, which they're the favorite to do. So I'm not going to say his job is not hot, because anybody who has a bad season can get fired. But, right now you would think that the expectations aren't high, so you shouldn't be fired if you're bad, because you expect them to be bad anyway.
Right. Expectations are super low, which that certainly has that going for him. However, I will say, what if, like you said, he proves to have no head coaching skills? He's just a coordinator all day long, doesn't handle timeouts well, doesn't handle the media well, whatever. I mean, just is not a CEO, is not a sideline presence. And I'll bet everything I have, that last coaching cycle period, nobody really wanted that job. Now, if you have Kyler to trade, 2 top 5 picks, tons of cap space, good candidates might be like, hey, I'll take that Cardinal job.
That's true. Right. And then, and I wonder if, let's say you end up not liking the job that the new GM is doing, and you think, okay, that's, the new GM always wants a new head coach kind of thing. And so that's an interesting one. And they want the number 1 pick. They have to feel good about their coach to coach him out of that after they draft that pick too. And it's a pretty pivotal season there for the Arizona Cardinals, no doubt.
Yeah. Thanks for getting us the number 1 pick. You're fired. We're going to give it to a better guy,
I don't know what it's like for you in Pittsburgh, and if a team starts slow, if people are always calling for the head coach's job, but the last 2 seasons, the 49ers have gone to the NFC Championship game, yet around week 7, people are yelling at me, 49ers fans, like, Kyle Shanahan's not it. He's a coordinator. It's not a head coach. They got to fire him. We can't stand this. And then all of a sudden they go on a run, and obviously Kyle Shanahan would get snapped up in 2 seconds if he was fired by the 49ers. I don't think it's the coldest seat, but it's not warm either.
No, I think it's awfully cold and would be crazy to move on. That's what I was going to ask you, and you answered the question. I was like, is the complaint he's not a leader of men, he's just an X's and O's geek, and play caller, not a head coach?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's like, okay, he can't, bad with game management, going for it, 4th down, late game stuff. He can't figure out quarterback to save his life. And those are kind of the things with him. But
safe.
He's safe.
Real safe. Yeah.
He's very safe. Another safe one, unless he wants to retire. It's Pete Carroll's world, right? He decides when he goes out.
Yeah, and I don't mean to skip ahead, but McVay might be exactly the same. One of these teams looks like they're really got out of the doldrums. The Rams look like they're jumping into the doldrums, but they're both highly respected, going to have Hall of Fame credentials for Carroll, and McVay is starting his career with that type of, start. I mean, that's a lot of projection. McVay's making a ton of money. I mean, if he didn't get out this year, why does he get out next year? I mean, I think it's both on them.
it was pretty telling that he's like, okay, I'm going to take on this rebuild now. And I like that they're taking their medicine now, and he's going to fight through a rebuild rather than, oh, cool, we won a championship, we traded all our assets, now our team sucks. Okay, see you later. I'll go to the booth and then I'll jump in on another team that has assets to build a team again.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as long as ownership was in lockstep with Les Snead, the GM, and Sean McVay, the head coach, as long as all those three they're like, we're going to do this and we know we might suck later, that's okay, then everything's fine. Now, if ownership was like, looks over at Les Snead and Sean McVay, like, what did you do? I'm trying to fight for butts and eyeballs in Los Angeles in this market. We can't have a team that's tanking because we'll lose all that goodwill and we'll lose all the people that we had coming to our games and excited about watching our football team. We have to win all the time, not just a little bit. And so if ownership wasn't on board with that, I could see, a firing coming, especially the GM variety. But I mean, I can't imagine not wanting Sean McVay to be your head coach.
Agreed. And that was actually one thing I was glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say, of course, when the Rams built this crazy thing, we're going to trade for Jalen Ramsey and all these different things, and we're not going to use a first-round pick for 10 years. Of course, they ran it by ownership and they put the stamp of approval on it. I mean, they just didn't do that willy-nilly and be like, oh, we traded another first-round pick. You cool with it? Sorry. So everybody was on board.
Like, was there buyer's remorse from the owner where they was like, oh, wait a second, I can't suck though either. Like, I want to win now. I'm fighting in the LA market, but now it's like, oh shoot, how long is this really gonna go?
If it's week 12 and you've embarrassed yourself 11 weeks in a row, he's still a human being with high standards sitting there in the press box every day going, and the boos are raining down. Like, yeah, I put my stamp of approval on this, but I'm the freaking owner. I can do whatever I want. And I don't like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, exactly. And if McVay walks away, I got to imagine that
whatever he wants
gets the pink slip though. Because McVay's probably walking to the booth anyway if he walks away.
If he wants, right? He can do whatever he wants.
Well, actually, he has to, right? Yeah. Oh, maybe that's the path. Ownership says, "Hey, go somewhere else and let me get a couple first-round picks for you."
Sean Payton.
Yeah,
maybe. I still think him and Carroll go as long as they want, at least for now.
Yeah, they're too good of coaches that you're just not hiring those guys. You can't see it.
Yep.
All right, there's the NFC. What do you guys think? At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram. Hit us up on the comments on YouTube as well. Make sure you're subscribed up. Hit the thumbs up. We appreciate you out there, and you can find us everywhere you find your podcasts. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.